They created a monster. Now they're trapped in an endless war to kill it. The Eldar were once the unmatched rulers of the galaxy, a species whose power, beauty, and psychic brilliance had no equal. But at the height of their glory, they drifted into a darkness of their own making. Their emotions grew wilder, their desires deeper, their pleasures unrestrained. At first, it was worship of sensation, then obsession, then full corruption. And as their empire drowned in excess, something in the warp began to awaken, something hungry, something watching. A god slowly forming from the very emotions the Eldar unleashed. And when it finally opened its eyes, the galaxy heard a scream that tore reality apart. For thousands of years, the Eldar believed their greatness was eternal, but their fall came in a single heartbeat. Their decadent worlds became silent graves. Their people, once immortal, were reduced to ghosts fleeing across the stars. In that moment of cosmic catastrophe, a new chaos god was born, Slaanesh, the dark prince of excess, agony, and despair. The shockwave of its birth consumed the souls of trillions, shattered Eldar cities into drifting ruins, and carved the Eye of Terror into existence. From that day onward, every surviving Eldar has lived under the shadow of the same nightmare. The god they accidentally created is forever hunting them. And now, scattered, broken, and divided into rival factions, they are all fighting the same impossible war, the desperate struggle to destroy Slaanesh before it destroys them. The Eldar were not merely a powerful civilization, they were the greatest species the galaxy had ever known. Their cities shimmered like living art, their technology responded to thought alone, and their lives stretched across millennia. Through psychic mastery and cultural brilliance, they built an empire so advanced that no rival could even imagine reaching their heights. But with such power came boredom, and with boredom came indulgence. What began as harmless entertainment grew slowly into a cultural sickness. Eldar society slipped from passion to obsession, from curiosity to addiction. Pleasure cults developed at the heart of their empire, drawing the brightest and most gifted into festivals of sensation so intense that the lines between joy and madness blurred. As their inner worlds sank deeper into excess, a psychic echo began to form in the warp, a shadow feeding on the emotions of an entire race. Some Eldar sensed the danger. Prophets warned that something monstrous was taking shape, something that grew stronger with every scream of pleasure and every whisper of cruelty. But their warnings were mocked, ignored, or silenced. The majority believed themselves untouchable, immortal, beyond consequence. They refused to see the storm they were creating. Their empire continued its spiral into decadence until the warp, swollen with billions of Eldar emotions, could contain the pressure no longer. A new consciousness began to form, slowly, quietly, inevitably. A god was being born, and the Eldar, trapped in their golden empire of desire, marched blindly toward their own extinction. The moment of Slaanesh's birth was not a simple event. It was a cataclysm that tore across space and time. When the last psychic spark ignited within the warp, the newborn god awakened with a scream that echoed through every layer of reality. The psychic shockwave traveled across the galaxy faster than light, crushing countless Eldar minds in an instant. Worlds that had glowed with life a moment earlier became silent mausoleums. Entire populations died without ever understanding why. At the heart of the Eldar Empire, the destruction was absolute. Psychic energy ripped through bodies, cities, and even the fabric of space. the souls of trillions were torn from their bodies and devoured instantly by the newborn deity. This moment of apocalyptic birth created a permanent wound in reality, the Eye of Terror. Where Eldar pleasure worlds once floated, there now churned a storm of madness, demons, and impossible landscapes. Everything the Eldar had built over millions of years vanished in a single heartbeat. Only a few survived. Craft worlds, massive ships that had escaped earlier, were far from the core worlds and thus avoided total annihilation. Exodites living on distant frontier planets felt only distant tremors. Drukhari, hidden deep in the webway, survived by consuming others' pain. But survival was not freedom. With its first breath, Slaanesh reached into the universe with a hunger that has never faded. The gods' gaze locked onto the surviving Eldar, drawn to them like a predator to its prey. To be Eldar from that day forward meant living under a curse, the knowledge that when death finally came, their souls would not rest. They would be hunted and devoured by the god they had unwillingly created. After the fall, the Eldar race fractured into isolated, desperate factions, each trying to outrun the shadow of Slaanesh in its own way. The craft world Eldar cling to a life of extreme discipline and spiritual purity. They believe that only through control, ritual, and careful psychic restraint can they prevent their emotions from feeding the Dark Prince. Each Eldar carries a soul stone to trap their spirit at death, keeping it safe from Slaanesh's hunger. Their entire culture revolves around survival, tradition, and avoiding the mistakes of their past. The Drukhari took a different path, one far darker. They knew their souls were doomed unless they found a way to starve Slaanesh's power. Instead of suppressing emotion, they embraced cruelty. By torturing others, they siphoned small fragments of vitality into themselves. This parasitic survival method prevents their souls from slipping into the warp, but it also damns them to an existence of constant violence, feeding on pain simply to live one more day. Harlequins, servants of the laughing god Segarok, exist somewhere between myth and reality. They roam the webway, performing deadly battles and ritualistic plays that carry cryptic messages about the past and future. Protected by their god's trickery, they fight both chaos and Eldar ignorance, believing that Segarok has a hidden plan to one day defeat Slaanesh through deception and illusion. The Exodites, scattered across distant worlds, survived by rejecting all Eldar decadence. Their simple, harsh lives keep them spiritually clean, far from the temptations that once doomed their race. Finally, the Inari emerged with a radical idea, uniting all Eldar souls into the god Ined, the god of the dead, who might one day challenge and destroy Slaanesh. Each faction survives in its own fragile way, but none are safe. Across 10,000 years, the Eldar have experimented with countless methods to weaken or destroy their monstrous creation, yet every attempt has fallen short. The Inari believe the key lies in death itself. Ined, the slumbering god of the dead, grows stronger with every Eldar soul preserved within soul stones. Their hope is to gather enough spiritual strength to awaken Ined fully, allowing it to challenge Slaanesh in a final cosmic battle. They have tried to unite the fractured Eldar factions, but mistrust and internal conflict have sabotaged their efforts time and time again. The Harlequins play a more mysterious role. They claim to possess fragments of a prophecy foretelling Slaanesh's imprisonment within a divine webway trap crafted by Segarok. Their plays hint at a labyrinth of illusions capable of confusing even a chaos god. Yet the plan remains incomplete, requiring knowledge scattered across hidden shrines and guarded by demons. Their struggle is one of secrets,
trickery, and endless sacrifice. The Drukhari, without meaning to, contribute in their own twisted way. By feeding on suffering and artificially sustaining their souls, they deny Slaanesh the psychic nourishment it craves. But their contribution is too small, too selfish, too unstable. Meanwhile, the craft world Eldar attempt to weaken Slaanesh by denying its souls, using spirit stones to trap their essence safely within infinity circuits. Their hope is simple: starve the Dark Prince long enough for it to weaken. Yet every Eldar death still risks slipping into Slaanesh's grasp, no matter how careful they are. And in the warp, Slaanesh's domain remains unchallenged, vast, seductive, and filled with the ghosts of their victims. Despite every strategy, every
gamble, and every century of effort, the god of excess continues to feast. The greatest tragedy of all is that Slaanesh persists not because the Eldar failed to kill it, but because the galaxy itself keeps the Dark Prince alive. A chaos god is not a creature with a physical body that can simply be slain. It is an embodiment of emotion. As long as mortals feel desire, ambition, pleasure, pain, or obsession, Slaanesh will always have power. Even if the Eldar vanished tomorrow, humans, orcs, Tau, and countless other species would still experience the emotions that sustain it. The god's existence is woven into the very psychology of the galaxy. The Eldar's own nature also makes defeating Slaanesh nearly impossible. They are a deeply emotional and psychic species, meaning every feeling they generate echoes loudly in the warp. Their passion, beauty, and intensity feed the very deity they wish to destroy. This is the curse they cannot escape. The qualities that once made them great now empower their enemy. Furthermore, the Eldar's internal division prevents any united strategy. Craft worlds distrust the Drukhari. Drukhari despise the Ynnari. Harlequins refuse to reveal the full truth of their plans. No single faction has the strength to challenge a chaos god alone. Even Ynnad, their greatest hope, requires a unity the Eldar simply do not possess. Meanwhile, chaos itself grows stronger with every war, every death scream, every emotion across the galaxy. Slaanesh feeds endlessly, eternally, effortlessly. The Dark Prince cannot be assassinated, imprisoned, or starved easily because it is nourished by the very nature of sentient life. And yet, the Eldar continue to fight. They cling to the belief that somewhere, somehow, there is a final answer, an end to the god that haunts their souls. Until that day comes, their war never ends. In the end, the story of the Eldar is not just a tale of tragedy, it is a warning carved across the stars. A reminder that a civilization can rise higher than any other, yet still fall to the shadows within itself. They created Slaanesh not through malice, but through forgetting who they were. And now, for 10,000 years, they have lived as survivors, haunted by the echo of their own past. The craft worlds walk the path of discipline. The Drukhari cling to cruelty. The Harlequins dance through prophecy. The Exodites retreat into simplicity. And the Ynnari chase the faint hope of a new god. Each faction is broken, but each refuses to surrender, because despite everything, the Eldar endure. They fight for every soul, every memory, every heartbeat their enemy seeks to claim. Somewhere in their myths, somewhere in the labyrinth of the webway or the depths of the infinity circuits, they still believe a final victory is possible. Maybe through Ynnad, maybe through Segorok's final trick, or maybe through a sacrifice not yet written in the stars. Until that day comes, they stand in defiance against the darkness they created, against the hunger of the warp, and against the god that will not stop hunting them. And so their war continues, relentless and eternal, not because they expect to win, but because they refuse to die.